can you use peer assessments, especially cross-cultural or ethnic boundaries, to then get a more baseline grit comparison?
So the problem with the peer assessments when you're talking about the cross-cultural work in particular is that, who are your peers? Like other people who also live in the same culture. So I don't think peer ratings get you out of that. But I do think that if you, and I know Google is always trying to hire better, right? Triangulation is a great strategy. In psychology, we call it the principle of aggregation. Whenever you have imperfect data from one source and imperfect data from another source, what you do is you put more and more imperfect data together. The error cancels out, right? Or the unsystematic variance, the error, and you get a stronger signal. So yeah, get a peer rating and a teacher rating and a performance task and look at their resumes. You could even throw the grit scale in if it's only one thing among many. And when you get a consistent signal that everybody thinks this person is gritty, then you actually have a good bet that they are.
Yeah, thank you for coming, first of all. Also, I saw you have an audiobook, so props to you. And also, guys, she read it herself.
I did.
Which is really sweet.
It's really fun, actually.
I'm going to listen to it, sped up anyway, but...
Okay.
No,
oh, really? Like Chipmunk?
Yeah,
Okay,
three times.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So my question is, you talk about this example of the biochem kid who is really, really, really deep into biochem. I would call him pointy, so to speak. Like he dug into that thing really hard. And you're talking about how you can use grit. The grit property gets you to do that, right? It's the people who can do that. So I had a question that's maybe it's outside of the scope of the grit. But my friends and I, we're actually very gritty people. We dig into things very, very deeply. But recently, particularly after graduating college, we had trouble figuring out what to actually be gritty into, right?
Yeah,
in college,
to be gritty about, yeah.
Right. In college, it's very easy, or even in school, because, it's kind of, the metric is there. You get good grades, maybe you pick a major, you do well in it, fine. But then in the real world, I find that my friends in particular, they have trouble being gritty, not because they can't be gritty, but because they want to be pointy, but they don't know what to pick. And then you can be really pointy in Russian literature, and then it turns out you need to make money or something. And,
yeah.
No offense, I'm just joking.
Yeah, no offense to Russian lit majors, if there are any.
But so how do you actually go about deciding what to be pointy in, especially when the cost of picking incorrectly can be high?
I think that one of the things that makes it so hard is that we know the cost is high, right? It can make us freeze up a little bit, right? I was at McKinsey, and there are a lot of people at McKinsey who, like me, had basically spent their entire life opening doors of opportunity, right? If I do this internship, I can do anything. And then if I go to McKinsey, anybody will hire me. You get to a certain point in life where you realize that that's not the game anymore. It's not opening doors of opportunity. It's actually walking through, right? And it's walking through and hearing the other doors slam shut. Now, that's even more paralyzing in terms of the anxiety that would produce when you don't have this really strong inner compass. You're like, okay, follow my passion. Where do I get one, right? And here's my advice about that. I do think that really, really gritty, passionate people have two sources of motivation. And these are two questions to ask yourself when you're going to ask yourself what to do the rest of your life. One is, what are my real interests, right? And they're still emerging. They develop over years. But for many of you, there were things that you were interested in and things that you were less interested in that were kind of boring for you around the time that you were hitting adolescence. So many gritty people will remember that they started liking to do something, at 12 or 13. There are exceptions like Julia Child, right? But interestingly, her interest at that early adolescent stage was writing. And if you think about who Julia Child really, grew up to be, it was not just a chef, but equally, if not more so, a writer, right, of cookbooks. So first to kind of think back down memory lane to when you were a young teenager, what are the things that you absolutely hated doing, but what are the things that you kind of started wanting to do spontaneously? That's a clue, right? That's a thread. The second major motivational drive of passion is purpose, importance. It really is almost moral for some people. It's like, what is the greater mission that my work serves? And if you think about your values, right, it can be, I really want to help people become their best selves, or, I really care about the environment. I mean, whatever it is that is for you a value that you think is deeply meaningful and isn't going to change, if you can follow that and figure out where it over